Hey everybody, Plushie here, and today we're going to be diving into the second Summer Servant of the year, also being one of the most versatile characters we've ever gotten in the game, having two different types of MPs, one being support, one being DPS. Of course, we're going to be talking about BB Dubai. And once again, I apologize for this video coming out so late, but hopefully you guys enjoy during this kind of JP downtime, because I seriously was expecting a second banner during Ordeal Call Part 2, but that obviously didn't happen. But the good thing about that is this video doesn't feel that outdated. So anyways, without further ado, let's get into today's FGO hot take topic on BB Dubai. So taking a look at BB Dubai's base stats, she has a pretty typical stat for Moon Cancer servants, which is of course lower attack in general and more bulky on the HP side. She's also interestingly a star attributed servant, meaning that she only interacts with beast attribute enemies and doesn't interact with the most common man earth sky triangle that most servants are involved in. So this can be a pretty good thing, at least for convenience, so you don't really have to worry about her damage fluctuating depending on most enemies. She has, of course, only 0.33% MP gain per hit, and with 5 hit quick cards and 4 hit arts cards, isn't amazing. Like, her card gain isn't amazing at all, but she has a lot of other stuff in her kit to boost that gain, which we'll get into a bit later. And other than that, she really isn't that special in any way, in my opinion. Her deck, of course, being QQAAB, in my opinion, I don't really like this deck. Especially for Arch Servants, I definitely would have preferred BBAQ for most cases, and this includes BB Dubai, especially considering her quick card isn't amazing, but you know, her base stat, it just really isn't that impressive overall. Most of her interesting parts lie in her skill set and MP. BB Dubai's first skill is a party-wide 20% arts up, as well as a party-wide 20 MP battery. It also gives her other two allies, not including herself, 3 turns of the preservation target trait buff, which will interact with her MP, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And if she's buffing a Moon Cancer or a Living Human, she further gives them 3 turns of 30% MP damage up, as well as 30% MP gain up. This is on a 6-turn cooldown. So this skill is really solid. Even if you just look at it for herself, because she of course is a Moon Cancer herself, she gets all of these different effects blended together, which certainly helps with her damage as well as her looping refund. And this of course provides even more value to her other teammates. Even if you're just using her with other standard arts units, especially if you're using her with like other arts supports like Tamamo or Castoria, they really appreciate the 20% battery charge as well as the arts up. And if you want to use her as a semi-support or even a full support, which she is totally capable of doing for a Moon Cancer or Living Human servant, then this skill obviously gives them so much value, right? There's certainly an argument to use BB Dubai as a replacement for one of your Castorias as a looping support, especially for Living Human servants. Like, I use her over Castoria on my Durga for all of my arts looping, because of course my Castoria is already bond 15 and she is very competent in supporting that kind of play. BB Dubai's second skill is an AoE buff removal effect, as well as an AoE attack down for a single turn by 100%. It also reduces all enemies' arts resist by 20% for 3 turns. It casts a 3-turn debuff trait called non-preservation target on all enemies, and if you are a Moon Cancer or a Living Human, of course including herself, you also gain an extra 3 turns of 100% star generation boost, as well as 30% crit up. All of this is on a 6-turn cooldown, which in truth is actually on a 5-turn cooldown. So this is yet another super stacked skill. AoE buff removal is a really useful tool against just boss fights that have either a lot of buff spamming or a lot of key annoying buffs, like a full HP Guts, for example, that is removable. It's a really good utility tool, and it also reduces all enemies' attack by 100% for a single turn, which, unless all enemies have like a lot of attack up boost, this is essentially an illusion effect that also isn't scared of Invul Pierce or buff removal, which is really, really powerful. So this is such a strong defensive utility like anti-CQ skill already, even when we only look at the first 2 effects. Of course, it also reduces all enemies' arts by 20%, which basically acts as a second party-wide art sub because everyone can hit the enemies and get the benefits from this arts down. It's just in the form of a debuff instead of a buff. And the special trait that she applies to the enemies allows her to deal anti-trait damage to all enemies. And as a spoiler, it also scales with her overcharge. So this makes her damage actually very, very strong as long as the enemy has this trait on them, which of course it lasts 3 turns and this skill has a 5-turn cooldown. So you're gonna have really good uptime with this. And this isn't even considering if you bring someone like Tamamo to further reduce the cooldown. And of course she works really well with Tamamo because she's an AoE arts DPS, so you can potentially just have this permanent on the enemy, so she would be doing massive amounts of MP damage. It's very similar to characters like Summer Kiara, but she obviously doesn't have to ramp this up at all, and it's just a lot more easy to use than older servants with this kind of effect. And of course, following the same theme of her first skill, she buffs moon cancers and living humans even more with the 100% star generation up as well as 30% crit up. This of course benefits herself a lot already, and also helps other mostly arts-based living human or moon cancers. Even if they just have a moderately high hit count on their MP, they're going to be able to generate a large amount of stars, which is traditionally not doable with an art servant. And of course, it also comes with a crit boost, so you can use those stars on. So overall, when you combine her first and second skill, she's actually quite the competent support for living human and moon cancers of the arts card type at the very least. And there are definitely situations that you might want to take her over like a meta support, especially considering that she has even more abilities to support with her MP transformation effect, which we'll get into right now when talking about her third skill. BB Dubai's third skill is a cooldown reduction for all of her own skills by 1 turn, as well as a 50 MP battery. And finally, she can also use this skill to switch her MP type. And all of this is on a 7-turn cooldown. So even when we don't look at the switch MP type effect, this is a 50 MP battery as well as a cooldown reduction effect to make her skill cooldown essentially 556 instead of 667, which is super strong because of course, when we look at her first and second skill, we can see how stacked they absolutely are. This also means that BB Dubai is an AoE arts looper with 70 MP battery, which we literally just saw this anniversary with Summer Aresh. Their battery spread is the exact same, a party-wide 20 MP battery as well as a 50 MP self battery. And finally, of course, the most important effect of the skill is her ability to switch her MP type. And unlike other characters we've seen before, such as Barguess, which switches from AoE to single target, BB Dubai switches her MP from a damaging MP to a supportive MP, which is of course really important. This allows BB Dubai to play as a pure support in certain circumstances, and we'll get into more of that when talking about her MP. But there's a couple of things you have to be wary of when using this skill. So first of all, BB always starts out in her DPS MP form, so if you want to use her supportive MP, you are forced to click this skill. Even if you use like a K-scope to try to save your charge, maybe you want to spam her support MP back to back, it's currently not possible. There is a small possibility that maybe after she unlocked her Ascension 3, she can start out with her support MP, then it would actually make her a lot more flexible than she is, but as of now, she is forced to burn this 50 battery if she wants to use her supportive MP no matter what. Secondly, BB Dubai's MP type transformation is actually just a 3-turn duration buff, so it's more like Summer Barguest, and unlike Melusine and Ptolemy, where the buff can just run out and her MP will be forced to transform back into her base form, which is the offensive MP. This can also be buff blocked as well as buff removed, so against certain bosses you have to be a little bit more wary whether you are actually activating your offensive MP or your defensive MP. This is actually a major restriction in terms of using her as a pure support, because you have to keep that transformation uptime high or even permanent by using something such as Tamamo's cooldown reduction, for example. So BB Dubai has a couple of very interesting passives to say the least. She has Item Construction C, which increases her own debuff success rate by 6%, which any form of boost is really nice, especially considering she really wants to land the 100% attack down on her second skill, because it could literally be the life and death of your entire front line, whether that lands or not, right? She also has Magic Resistance EX, which is a passive 25% debuff resistance, which is really strong, especially considering she also has Goddess Essence A, which is yet another debuff resistance by 25%. So BB Dubai has a passive of 50% debuff resistance. Like, this is one of the greatest passive combos of all time. Goddess Essence plus Magic Resistance EX, where you just has massive amounts of debuff resist built into your passive, so you can practically ignore half of the debuffs that the enemy throws at you. Also, combos very well with other debuff resist boosting supports, such as Asclepius as well as Rhaenys, to basically have debuff immunity. So really nice. And she also has Future Management, which is a unique passive that increases her own critical attack chance resistance by 20%, as well as her own star absorption up by 20%. Having the ability to receive less crits is always nice. I wouldn't really bank on it, but occasionally it will save your life. The Star Absorb up doesn't really help that much because Moon Cancer has really poor base Star Absorb up already, so having this small 20% boost really doesn't help at all. She has Human Order Assessment Attack, which increases her own attack against enemies with evil alignment, has anti-good damage mod, or non-servant enemies in general by 10%. So this is a pretty complicated one. Evil is really good coverage. 10% passive anti-evil is really nice. 10% anti-non-servant enemies is also really nice, because obviously the first two waves of farming are usually composed of non-servants. And of course, people who have anti-good damage mod, I don't think anyone's gonna ever remember who has that, but I guess that's a slightly bit of extra coverage from that effect. She also has the counterpart to that, which is Human Order Assessment Defend, which increases her defense passively against enemies with lawful alignment, has anti-evil damage mod, and servant enemies by 20%. Simply having passive 20% defense up against servants is already really strong, because most challenge quests are composed of servants, and a lot of boss fights are also servants, of course, but it of course has even better coverage with lawful and people who has anti-evil damage mods, which, to be fair, I feel like both of these categories are usually servants as well, but sometimes it will have a little bit more coverage than just servants. So first of all, let's talk about BB Dubai's base form MP, which is the Offensive MP. It's an AoE 5-hit Arts MP that gives her a 1 turn 30% anti-Sky power mod, as well as a 1 turn 30% anti-Star power mod. So Sky is a decent coverage, of course. It's a little bit less than Man and Earth, but it's still technically one of the big three categories of all servants, and the Star is just a tiny bonus against very few servants. So overall, the coverage is decently nice, but it's only a 30% power mod, so it's really not that significant, especially when you start to add on other MP damage up effects and Oberon, so it's just a really tiny bonus. She also casts a 3 turn 20% arts down on all enemies, which is really nice for challenge quests, because this of course increases her further MP's damages as well as refund, and the entire party's MP gain when they use their arts cards. But in a farming scenario, this absolutely does not do anything, because this happens after damage. And finally, her overcharge effect is anti-trait damage against non-preservation target status enemies, which of course she can apply herself with her second skill, and it scales normally like 150% all the way up to 200%. The MP is pretty decent, nothing too extraordinary. The refund isn't amazing either, but the most important part is of course the universal anti-trait, which is really strong against bosses, because obviously this debuffs trait lasts for 3 turns, so you have a lot of window to do damage with your spammable MP. However, this of course doesn't really help her in farming that much. She will fall into a similar category as characters such as Summer Kama or Summer Kiara, where they have 1 turn of massive damage by providing universal anti-trait, while the other 2 waves are a lot less flattering. But of course, BB Dubai doesn't just have a damaging MP, she also can transform her MP into a supportive one by using her skill 3. So now the MP no longer does damage, but it gives the entire party 1 turn of invul, as well as 1 turn of debuff immunity. It also increases the entire party's MP damage up for 3 turns that scales with her MP level from 30% all the way up to 50%. And finally, she charges the MP gauge of allies with preservation target statuses except for herself for 30 MP and scales all the way up to 50 MP. Now this requires some extra explanation because BB Dubai's first skill does give her other 2 allies preservation target status, but not herself. So why did the MP specify that the MP cannot charge the MP of herself? Well, BB Dubai can get the preservation target from a second BB Dubai. So this MP just guarantees that the user of this support MP cannot charge herself. However, if you were to bring actually 2 BB Dubais, if the other BB Dubai were to give your BB Dubai the preservation target status and she use her supportive MP instead, then she can charge your BB Dubai. It's just that the BB Dubai cannot charge themselves, they can charge each other still. So the MP itself is of course super powerful. It's basically a blend of Castoria's MP and Tamamo's MP, and of course it also has a very unique niche of giving the entire party debuff immunity for a full turn. So it's not time based, it's not really scared of like, oh, one of the debuffs eating it up and then the boss lands the actual devastating debuff to screw over your team. But no, you don't have to worry. It's just 1 turn of full immune. And of course, it's not just a full defensive MP, it also gives the entire party offensive buffs, which in this case is in the form of MP damage up instead of attack up, and the numbers even scale the exact same as Castoria's attack up with MP level. Personally, I'd say the amount of protection that your party gets from a full-on 1-turn invul is about the same as overcharge to Castoria, which is 2 hits of solemn defense on all of your targets. Obviously, it's not invul pierce immune like solemn defense, but there's of course also the risk of one of your targets taking 3 hits in a row and then just actually taking damage on the same turn you activate Castoria's MP. So it's a bit difficult to compare, but it's definitely situational. There are certainly situations where a full-on 1-turn invul is just better, mostly against enemies that have a lot of actions for some reason, or they're just like straight up 6 enemies that all attack on the same turn. Of course, the MP also has an engine effect that's similar to Tamamo's MP, where it charges your party's MP gauge, synergizes really well with other art supports, and of course your main DPS. But she doesn't charge herself, so it's not as spammable as Tamamo. But overall, this MP is really powerful. It has some of the best parts of the top tier art supports we have right now in the game. Its greatest restriction is, of course, the fact that the MP transformation is only a 3-turn duration buff. So it's kind of awkward. If you want to use her as a pure support, you either have to just accept the fact that you're going to have downtime for this effect, or you have to bring a secondary support to get this support's cooldown low. And also, if you are just running a standard arts team where you're using 1 DPS and 2 supports, BB Dubai can't be the 1 DPS because you either just never transform your MP into the defensive one, or you have to take the consequence of not being able to do damage with your MP for 2 extra turns if you want to use her defensive MP. Like, you can't deactivate it willy-nilly, and BB Dubai, being such a MP damage centric character, would have her DPS cut down by a lot if you decide to do that. So even though it's really powerful, I think there's definitely awkward parts about this MP because of the fact that it's not a form change like Melusine, but it is a buff that will run out. In terms of farming, BB Dubai as a single core looper has the same issue as Summer Kama and Summer Kiara if you use her in a standard double Castoria arts looping team. because once again, her main source of damage is from her skill 2's universal anti-trait, but that can only exist within one of the waves. And for the other 2 waves, her damage is absolutely gonna suck. So you can see here with the numbers, it's not flattering at all. But BB Dubai is a little bit more flexible in a sense, because BB Dubai is a great looping support as well. So you can swap out one of your Castorias for another BB Dubai. And if you do that, you actually have 2 waves of the special debuff that she can hit anti-trait against. So as you can see here with the numbers, if we specifically look at the double BB Dubai comp, then her second wave damage is actually a lot more impressive than every other neutral arts looper. It's only losing to Summer Ibuki, which, I mean, Summer Ibuki's not neutral. This is calculated assuming she hits 1.5 times class advantage, so quite impressive, but still not the greatest thing ever, because you are sacrificing one of the Castorias, and even though BB Dubai can kind of serve as a looping support, it's still not as good as Castoria. So the amount of nodes that you're going to be able to loop with this comp is a little bit worse than if you were just to run double Castoria and plug Oberon, right? So I don't think she's an amazing single core looper, but at the very least she has like one unique thing that she can do to sort of mitigate this problem with the one wave debuff based burst damage looper. In terms of multi-core, I think she has a lot more potential. Her first and second skills are of course great, you know, party-wide support, especially that first skill. If you pair her with another living human or Moon Cancer, it's already really good. And of course, she also has 70 MP battery. You really want big batteries on multi-core farmers, because you don't want to have to dedicate a bunch of MP charge on your secondary DPS in a farming comp, and you don't really have to do that with BB Dubai. And if she's not using her MP in multiple waves, her second skill debuff, like only lasting for one wave issue, is no longer an issue. Her damage in terms of if we only look at one single wave is actually really high compared to other neutral DPSs, and of course it's universal, so it's really strong in that aspect as well. And finally, you can even do a really cool thing with BB Dubai, where if you do have a lot of party charge, or if you have like a starting charge CE from certain events, BB Dubai can use her offensive MP on one wave early, and then she can use her third skill and transform her MP into the supportive MP, and then buff the other farming DPS's MP damage in future waves. So there are certainly a lot of potential for BB Dubai's multi-core farming, especially as we get more and more arts-based living humans or Moon Cancers in the future. We already see some wacky stuff with Alco, for example, and it's really cool to see what innovation comes out of this character. In terms of challenge quest performance, I covered most of the things I wanted to say when talking about her skill set and MP already, but essentially her first skill is a great party-wide support, and it's a really good thing to have that as an arts DPS, because it also helps your other actual arts supports charge their really strong supportive MPs. Her second skill is great utility and just anti-challenge quest in general. AoE buff removal is almost always really useful, and AoE 100% attack down is actually a really good defensive effect in an arts team, because it doesn't necessarily feel redundant in the face of Castoria's MP, since Castoria's MP can't really deal with defensive buff removal effects, but this absolutely can. So it kind of covers the one weakness that Castoria has in terms of defense, so it's really nice as well. And the majority of BB Dubai's like damage source comes from debuffs, and it's infinitely better in a challenge quest scenario rather than farming, because you don't have to worry about, oh, the debuffs just going away after you clear one of the waves, because most of the times you're only dealing with one wave of enemies in boss fights and challenge quests. So her arts down actually ramps up, and her universal trait that she can hit anti-trait on absolutely lasts for 3 turns instead of just for one wave, right? But on the flip side of that is, if the boss has really high debuff resistance or just straight up debuff immunity, then BB Dubai just becomes really bad. Like, her survival's gone, the attack down's gone, the universal anti-trait's gone, because this trait is unlike actual traits like Dragon or Evil. It's a debuff, so you actually cannot land this through debuff immunity, unlike someone like George or Ruler Moriarty. So she just loses most of her like offense and defense if she's against a boss that cannot be debuffed. So that obviously is a great negative. But of course, BB Dubai can be used as a support. My biggest problem with that is, as I mentioned earlier, she doesn't have constant access to her supportive MP. You either have to bring her with Tamamo to reduce her skill 3 cooldown and have constant uptime for her transformation on her MP, which would also mean that you're essentially cutting out Castoria from your frontline, which is not a sacrifice that most people are willing to make. Or you can run 2 BB Dubais and alternate their MP forms, because BB Dubai's third skill is a 6-turn cooldown skill with a 3-turn duration MP transformation effect. So you can start out with 1 BB Dubai untransformed and the other BB Dubai transformed, and after 3 turns, when the transformed BB Dubai goes back into DPS mode, you transform the initial DPS BB into the supportive BB Dubai. And when this BB Dubai's support effect runs out, the first BB Dubai that you initially transformed would have had her third skill's cooldown back, and she can turn back into the support again. The team comp definitely has its merits. You have to be a little bit smart in terms of your skill usage timings, but I think the biggest issue with it is obviously the CE choice for your BB Dubai, because the best offensive CE in the game right now, of course, is Black Grail, and you don't necessarily want to use Black Grail on your BB Dubai, because for half of the match it's just gonna do nothing but give her like passive HP reduction. And also, you don't have a heal on your party unless you're cutting Castoria for something like Tamamo, which I actually think might potentially be a better third arts teammate than Castoria in a lot of the cases, because you really want your skills to have shorter cooldowns. But it's fun. I don't think it's necessarily that great compared to your standard arts DPS Castoria plus either Tamamo or Lady Avalon, but at the very least it's an interesting team comp. So I think the actual correct way to use BB Dubai as a support is just to live with the fact that she's not going to have constant access to her supportive MP. Her first and second skills are still great supportive effects regardless, and her supportive MP is actually more situational than wanting to be spammed. Obviously, spamming the MP damage up for 3-turn effects as well as the party-wide MP charge is really good. The 2 other major effects, which is the debuff immunity and the party-wide invul, are more situational, and you don't necessarily have to constantly have them to be effective. I think the best example is on break effects. There are many bosses that would either dump a bunch of debuffs on you on break, or just straight up full charge and MP your entire party on break. And BB Dubai's MP can counter both of those situations, and it only needs to be used right before you break their bar to be effective instead of being spammed. So you just have to be a little bit smarter with your timing in terms of transforming her MP, instead of trying to force a comp that will allow you to have constant access to that MP. In conclusion, I think BB Dubai is a servant that fully embraces the idea of being a Swiss Army knife character who does a little bit of everything very well. She is a pretty competent AoE arts looper and a even better multi-core farmer who specializes in supporting living humans and moon cancers. She's also a phenomenal AoE arts challenge quest DPS who has a lot of different tools such as AoE buff removal as well as 100% AoE attack down, which is a hard defense tool that actually patches up Castoria's one weakness in terms of defense. She also can serve as a really great support that is a nice blend of hard survival and team sustain. She also offers the very special niche of giving the entire party a full turn of debuff immunity, which other meta supports cannot offer. However, there are a couple of nuances in terms of using her, especially as a support, as her transformation is temporary, so you either have to find a workaround for that downtime, or use her MP more sparingly and only activating her transformation right before you really need her MP's effect. I think BB Dubai can provide you with a lot of value just at MP1 if you mainly want her to be a support or semi-support, and if you want her to be a main DPS just like any other AoE character, I'd say MP2 Plus is preferred. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and finally we are caught up with all of the current JP SSRs, and let's look forward to what Ordeal Call 3 Part 3 will bring us. I'll see you guys in the next one.